Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back to our Unlock and Learn webinar series. We took I think like a month or two break because, man, we got really busy and slammed right prior to the summer season, which made us think like it's time to get back into it. Summer, and what are we talking about mainly today is, what should my pricing be, whether or not you are in majority of us your peak season or getting ready for your shoulder season. So I'm super excited to have Hosteeva's VP of Revenue Management, also one of my colleagues. So I get to selfishly work with him every day, and I love doing that. Who has joined us recently from, you've been here almost a year, right? And joined us from 25 years of revenue management experience. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hello everybody. Chris Curry. I've been in New Orleans my whole life. Born and bred a West Banker. Been in the hotel industry, started at a big Hilton in food and beverage, and then worked my way through revenue management. And as Talia said, I'm been with Hosteeva since September, and it's been a roller coaster. It's been great. So.
I love the roller coaster, right? And anyone who knows revenue management is like, hey, no matter what, that is kind of the role of what it is. And Hosteeva ourselves, right? Being operators and a software people, it is an interesting spot to fill, right? Who are the people that we service?
As anybody, right? I mean, from single owners to people that have multiple units. We have buildings, that have been hotels that have been converted into short-term rentals. We have hotels. So I mean, our variety, our business runs the gamut from not just short-term rental units, but hotels as well.
It's true, right? And people always, I feel like their faces get bright when they're like, "Hey, who are you servicing?" And it's like, man, like there's not one person, right? Like if you have a rentable asset in the short-term rental space, not even going to say short-term rental space, we do midterm, timeshare, right? Anything out there, a rentable asset, whether you are an owner, a manager, or you own an independent hotel. Hosteeva's really fallen into this place where we've been able to solve that from people. So, and the way we have is mainly through distribution and pricing, right? That's kind of really what we're getting into, right? Why we got there and why we're here and where we're in revenue management. I remember about like 5 years ago, or maybe 7 years, I don't know what time is these days, when I worked for a company where we were kind of introducing this concept of revenue management consulting on top of machine learning and all of these different things. So, talk to us about like the origin of revenue management and where are we, like where do we go and where are we at right now?
No, and it's really funny. When you were talking about where short-term rentals are now, to from when it started to now, it's kind of interesting because I was in a conference at a branded conference, and short-term rentals and Airbnb just started, and I mean it was to the point where these brands sat there and they said, "Oh, this is a fly-by-night thing. It's not going to catch on." Well, boy, were they wrong, right? I mean, this is something that has really blown up to the point that, what you said, Talia, is revenue management is now becoming a piece of every individual owner of a short-term rental unit. Revenue management's always been, oh, we just we look at pricing, but it's a lot more than that. I mean, we're looking at trends, right? We look at, 3 to 5 years worth of trends. We look at minimum length of stays. We look at, what the market's doing over certain time periods. We can devise seasonality. We look at what the best discounts and best promotions to do and the best times to offer it. Like I said, revenue management started as like this little, nerdy numbers girl, a guy who was just like staring at numbers and they, looked just like me, pressing up the glasses and saying, this, to having a voice in the room, right? Where, when people talk, they want to talk to the revenue managers now because they do have the numbers and they're the ones that can slice and dice it left and right. And it's also grown not just from the rooms to units, it's also to the ancillary revenue, looking at late checkouts, early check-ins, and the monies that we can make off of that, or, parking, looking at any of those ancillary revenues that really help and help drive the bottom line, right? Because that's ultimately, when you look at it, that's free money for any, short-term rental unit owner, right? Any way that they can get that is additional money on top of the ADR that they're getting.
And you probably see a lot of people out there where you're like, hey, if I'm a manager or something, how do people, stay competitive with their commission fees or their commission rates? And right way is with smart revenue management and ancillary revenue. And I think you also a really good thing that I heard you say. You said discounting. And for some reason, always revenue management or dynamic pricing. Revenue management is just the act of strategy and what we are building. Dynamic pricing, machine learning, whatever we want to call it, right? Is the AI and the tech behind it, right? But when you hear discounting, it's not always discounting your property. You said something to me yesterday when we were talking. You said it's about building that strategy, right? Being above where you need to be and where you got last year. So when you're discounting, you're never below where you were year over year. You're still hitting your same goal numbers. So instead of looking at it as a discount, right, it's just a part of your strategy in the booking window.
Right. Yeah. And from the discounting side, look, I'd love to say that we never have to, do, fire sales or anything like that. But, when plans don't go the way you want to, which, being in this industry, it usually doesn't. Sometimes you have to do last minute sales and you have
It's
to
not
do
black
basic
and
work.
white in travel. Is that what you're saying?
What's that?
Are things not black and white in travel? Is
No,
that what
no, there's definitely a gray area, but once again, like, ultimate goal for promotions and discounting is to attack something uh that you're not normally getting, right? So if you're
Mhm.
seeing in your market a 4 night average stay, well, then your discounting should be towards a 5 or more night average stay so that you're getting that longer length of stay. If your booking window is 50 days out from the arrival date, maybe you should, offer an early booking discount to try and drive the higher rates because ultimately the rates are usually higher further out. I might be giving secrets out that I shouldn't be, but I'm going to do it. Um, but
Well,
rates are usually out
learn
further.
secrets to success. So
Right.
just so you I mean,
Right.
gotta watch the secrets.
Right. But you want to look at your booking windows and say, hey man, I normally book like 50 days out. How about I put a early booking at 55 days where it's usually at a higher rate, give the discount to where I would normally get at, and then you have your rooms booked, right? And there's a peace of mind having that in there. So discounting isn't something that should be like taboo. It's something that should be used to attack the weaknesses in your market.
Right. You're trying, like you said, you're trying to get something you haven't gotten before. Like
Right.
that is the goal of that. And before we move more to like the role of revenue management, AI and data and that mix of what some people do, I really want to talk about like we're saying a lot of things here, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like I can kind of go understand what you're saying as a revenue manager just because I talk about this having this industry, but as a single family homeowner, right? Versus someone with a large business, right? At what point do you need to think about, hey, maybe I need some help or I need some or something to support me in this, this journey of what I should be doing in pricing.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest piece, and looking outside the revenue management role is just help with the units. You know what I'm saying? I had a conversation with the owner the other day. He's like, man, I get calls 7 days a week. People can't get into their rooms, can't get that. It's nice to have that support of a team like Hosteeva to do that for you, where you're just answering a phone call and they're asking for authorization. You're saying yes, and they're handling it for you, right? And then from the pricing side, having, our goal is we have 6,500 units throughout the world, right? Our team is a total of 5 people. Okay. There's no way that I could touch 6,500 units a day, every day of the year. There's no possible way. So with our software, having the AI that's driven off of booking windows and occupancy, it allows us to kind of look at, put a plan in place where we're looking at days, from arrival to about 30 days in for the majority of the units, as well as special event dates to make sure that we're still pricing correctly. And from that side, that helps us. It just gives us one a peace of mind that everything's working right. Two, it gives us a lot more time to work on other things like we talked about, like the discounts, the promotion, the promotions, anything like that. So it's given us, we're not just doing, the mundane piece of just changing rates. We're just reviewing rates and then working on other ways to drive revenues.
Exactly. And I think it's a great segue I was kind of saying, right? You don't have to be the complete data nerd. You don't have to be the revenue manager, right? There are things that can support you. Hosteeva has a great technology and team to push you, but there are other people that we hear a lot. We love our partners at like Price Labs, Beyond Pricing, right? And the goal is there's no easy button, right? It's going to make it easier, let's
Right.
say easier button, right? And it can help you get to all those trends so that you can focus on the things that or that the things that where you need to make a couple improvements in your strategy is what like the
Right.
goal is. So what is your definition of dynamic pricing? I'm just interested from a revenue management standpoint.
Well, so dynamic pricing is basically it's based off of occupancy and booking windows, and dynamic pricing changes a little bit, like from the independent short-term rental unit owner to the hotel, right? If you only own one unit, your dynamic pricing is really based off the booking windows, right? But if you have several units in one building, well, then all of a sudden you're looking at occupancies, and you're looking to get every penny you possibly can. And with dynamic pricing, looking at that, it allows you to kind of drive a little bit higher revenue than what you would normally do, right? So that the dynamic pricing is just, having the computer review what you would normally review and do it for you, right? And you just kind of review it, just like everybody does with their workers, right? We review what they do and we say, you did it wrong or you did it right. So it's just, look, I'm a revenue manager. I've done it for a long time. And I'm going to tell you, my part of the job that I hate is staring at rates all day long. And
Mhm.
with the dynamic pricing piece, I don't have to stare at rates. I can do the creative piece, drive my team to do the right things. So dynamic pricing makes your life easier, and it also, it is garbage in, garbage out, right? Like, so if you don't understand your market and you put it together, then yeah, you're going to have problems. But if you can dive into the information that, Air DNA gives you, or, key data gives you, then that makes it, you'll have confidence in what you put in those pricing and that dynamic pricing.
So you were exactly what I was going to say, right? I think that you said like from the single unit person to the person who has, thousands of units, like how you have it to help you, how much data is input into it, and what additional things do you need, right? At
Right.
Hosteeva, right, we have a large layer of data that is coming in on that is not only powering our dynamic pricing, but powering, like you said, you don't want to look at rates all day, but looking at a key data report is kind of pretty compared
Mhm.
to a rate, right? It's pulling it together. It's
Right.
benchmarking those things for us in our markets, understanding what levers to kind of pull. So, we're a little over halfway, and I want to kind of before, we go to the end of everything, I want to talk about the hard parts of revenue management, right? We're sandwiching this part, right? It's like the hard part of it is when you have to have the hard conversations with owners, right?
Yeah.
I think are in an interesting time. And I feel like a parent when I'm about to say this, right? It's not, oh, we're past COVID and we have to figure out things are leveling out. We're probably getting back to normal like that. I've said that so much in my head, but there's a true situation that is happening. There's a lot of owners in Gulf Coast areas and other areas where they made an astronomical amount of money that they became comfortable with
Right.
for 5 years since
Hmm.
June 20. We're coming up on year 5, and we're seeing some decreases in travel with that versus whether or not we're becoming back to normal or economic situation. But how do you have these conversations with owners? Because I do hear a lot of property managers say, like, we are very much in a quality over quantity world, right? Owners, if you can explain it to them and tell them, right, they understand it, right? But you have to you have to educate them.
Right. Yeah. And look, that's the hardest part to have with an owner, right? I mean, look, a lot of these owners, like you said, they came in at a time that, business was booming, right? Especially in markets like the beach markets.
Interest rates were low. People could just buy houses.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
oh, got me hurt at the
Right.
moment.
But I
Just think
mean, now with, one, the economic outlook, two, insurance rates just skyrocketing, right? Property taxes are going up. And on top of that, we're seeing a decline in occupancy that, that we haven't seen over the past, 5 years, right? So it does get tough with the owners. However, what we like to do with the owners is, first off, we want to give them the data. Okay. We give them the information that we have and say, hey, this is where we think we need to be. This is what we need to do, right? But we also have a plan in place to say, listen, on top of that, this is what we need to do from a marketing effort, where we say we can do this with your property. We can, this is the discounts that we want to look at. These are the promotions that we can do. And then, looking at the seasonality of, markets, right? And understanding that is a big piece too. And look, some owners, they're going to sit, what is it? Proud and empty, right? And sometimes it's just, having that conversation, like sometimes proud and empty doesn't pay the bills, right? And, just getting them to understand, like, hey, we're not trying to, like, undercut the market. We're not catfish. We're not catfish. We don't feed at the bottom. We want to be at the middle, right? We want to be the middle to the top. And sometimes, based off of, the month and the demand in the month, we're going to be lower, right? But that's because we're looking at it and we understand that to make money, we need to do this, right?
Mhm.
And yes, those are hard conversations. The great part is our owners are great. So they're usually not mean. So
A lot of them are very happy from the beginning that they always are all like, "Oh no, I get it. I trust you. You treat me like the number one person." I really love to hear what our owners have to say, and it's true, right? It's just about educating them and telling them what's going on and just keeping alert, right? And having goals, right? And one thing that I've talked with so many revenue managers over time, right? I should be a pro in revenue management. Maybe I am. This is imposter syndrome, coming in there. But one thing I always hear revenue managers ask, and I hear you ask this in every one call, is what is your bare minimum? What do you want to take, or what would you rather zero over? Is
mhm.
kind of what you ask, right? Because that's what you're battling against, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, is you're battling against nothing
yeah. Well,
or not money. And we're
and the other,
on, like you said, but if you're in these tough situations, this is only in these times, right? Filling occupancy and things like that. But I don't even feel like we're not at no one, and I know Hosteeva, like, no, we're not at our bare minimums,
yeah,
right? Like this, we're playing the market game, right? And you
like,
just have to be ready to pivot.
yeah. And, the other piece too is look, one of the issues that revenue managers have is we can get a lot of data. We have a lot of data. We know how to pull a lot of data, and we want to present that data, right? The problem, a lot of problems is that we don't know how to explain the data sometimes, right? And we know what it says in our head, but to somebody who's just a sole owner of a short term rental, it's just going to kind of go like just go over their head,
Mhm.
right? So it's also kind of being, just understanding your what is that called? Understanding your audience. That's the word I was looking for, and
I'm gonna give everyone a tip, a secret. How do you help understand your audience, right? So I'm on tons of calls where Chris, where he's got all this data in the world and he's telling me all these things, like, and all of us like, aha, like you're just supposed to get it, right? Like this is what this all means. So I often record our calls and then I take this transcript, I put it in my AI, and I say, can you explain it to me like I don't understand revenue management? And in like 3 to 5 bullet points, and to me, and then I go and send it to the client in the recap. So anyone listening, right? This is another way. Just use AI to your advantage, right? Like if you're like, man, I have anxiety every time I get on a call with my revenue manager. Or I do this. I don't know what I'm gonna do next. Consume it, record it, throw it in GPT, and ask it to feed it to you in a way that you'll be able to understand it, right? I love
so
saying, like, tell me like a 2-year-old.
I think, yeah, I think the first thing that AI learned was how to translate nerd. I think that was the biggest thing, So
I have used it more in writing tech user stories than anything else. But this is a good pivot into AI, right? So, revenue management, it's so much more than rates, it's so much more than pricing. We've talked about that, right? And to make things more difficult, there's things that you need to do, like looking at your photos, your headlines, your
mhm.
conversion funnel of travelers, sending emails, and what is all coming in, right? And how has that started to play a role into Hosteeva, not just the pricing team, the revenue management team, and how is that, helping us?
Yeah, look, AI is a great tool, right? The one thing about AI though is just like any other, RMS system used in a hotel, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? And so if you're not putting the correct information in, it's not going to give you the correct information out, right? So there is some legwork with AI. Not as much as like doing it on a daily basis, but it does, if you set up everything correctly, it's going to run the way you want to. If you just kind of, do it willy-nilly, you're gonna get that result, right? So AI is coming in a big piece. I think that it helps us. One is, the connectivity that we have with all the distribution channels, right? Where, we don't have to dig into extranets on Expedia or, booking.com. We can build promotions right into our site and it will go in directly into these channels, right? That's a big piece. And then the other piece is like the pricing templates that we use to set up everything that really helps out. But yeah, I mean, like AI has definitely helped us out from a long, in a long piece. I mean, one thing I love is Zoom calls where we can do like meeting minutes and stuff like that. We have weekly calls with every market that we have, and I don't have to do minutes on it anymore. I just, hit a button and it just sends the minutes out for me. So
That's been one of those beautiful things and all part of like leadership, I have to say. And I think if anyone is not using that, pricing, revenue manager, whatever, but like, leadership meetings, meeting minutes, any kind of demo, things like that. It's not lazy, it's smart, right? I mean, I just can't remember things the way that I used to, unless it's obviously a 90s or 2000 pop song. Then I can remember every word. But I can't remember everything from a demo we just got off of. Let it give you that and give you the action items. My Trello board, like, is just beautiful since I've like said, like, give me what I should be doing. You put it in there and it powers you, the things that are harder. But
right.
some other ways we're using it, like you said, like headlines, but we're using it from the revenue management aspect, from listing optimization, right?
Mhm.
So I worked at Verbo for a long time on the listing optimization team. And until I started selling revenue management, I didn't know listing optimization was revenue management.
Yeah.
So, but that part of, is my property reaching the travelers that it should be reaching? And is it being visible in the way that it should, whether it is a photo or the description or anything around that, right? And we now have AI is kind of like going in and saying, hey, based on guest feedback, whether it's survey, reviews, public, private responses, because we all have that in there, right? AI responds to that. But based on this and based on your listing description, we think you need to make a couple changes. Or, hey, your last 10 reviews said that it's kind of dirty.
Well,
You know,
the great part about too is descriptions of the units, right?
yes. Oh, big fan.
Look, back in the day in the hotel days, I used to have to write descriptions, and it would be 412 square foot, one bedroom unit with a 45-inch TV, Wi-Fi, da da da. Now you have this AI that's coming out, and it's using keywords that it's finding in Google that to say, hey, like this is what people are looking for, and it builds a whole description around these keywords that are being searched, right? It takes the
That's such a great
legwork out of
point.
it.
It yeah, builds it all that, and then it feeds it up to you, right? It's got the keywords in it, and maybe you don't like it that much, and you're like, hey, make it a little bit more calm. Let's change it for the fall, right? It's just, I mean, it's just amazing what it can do. We could geek out on AI forever, but the point of this is just to say like how it has really like just can the technology and the person, right? So the two together, whether it's pricing, revenue management, listing optimization, just being a vacation rental property manager in any field right now, like
Mhm.
you utilizing it to help fuel.
Yeah, no, and look, the great part is the Eva AI that we're rolling out, right, with the telephone service. Look, the owners are really excited about this to the point that I think that I get either a recording from our CTO Tony or Sam pulling me in his office saying, check out what Eva can do now, right? And it sounds completely like a human, answers like a human. The only way you can tell it's AI is there's a slight pause between questions. But
Right.
honestly, I think sometimes humans should pause before they answer questions to begin with. So but other than that, I mean, it's just amazing how far we've come, right? So
I love that you said that, right? Because I literally have had this for like 10 years in front of my computer. It says, it's recorded there, that's new, but it says slow down because you're right. Humans should pause. And I'm noticing that, like, not only obviously I've been heavily in the AI testing of hours, but when I call people or I answer my phone, I feel like I'm answering more cold calls because I want to know if it's AI. And I just can't tell. And one way is, you ask it a stumping question that it can't answer, and then it'll send to a human.
right.
And that's where you get it. But it's miraculous because I think everyone's a little fearful of like the phone stuff, but I think it's so exciting. Or at least a 50% of people that I would say are. But when you call something, you want an instant response. You don't want to wait on a line. That's what it's actually doing for you, right?
Mhm.
Like going through the same knowledge bases, the same training, the same call scripts that the individual person's doing, and also having a human there in case it's needed. So
Right.
that's what's been miraculous. I had one call recently to our Eva AI, and I had a whole bunch of distractions going on, and I was trying to ask questions about a property, and I was amazed how it actually understood everything. Like, it's like it didn't hear any of the distractions in the background, be like, hang on, stuff like that. So that was super cool. But anyway, this has been really great. I could talk about revenue management forever, right? And the plan here is that, Chris and I do think that this summer is time where you have to pivot, you have to be close to the numbers. So we would like to, we're probably going to be back next month talking about some trends maybe we're seeing for the summer, and then how to prepare for your, how do you prepare for your like shoulder season when when you're really in the midst of all of this. And then we're really hoping, our Price Labs partners will probably come join us at some point too. Gonna, tag them on here so that they know that we're ready for them so that we can get the data from everywhere. But Chris, what would you leave an operator or an owner or a host or a manager with if, revenue management is an anxiety, or occupancy, if they're having any anxiety around pricing right now, what would you leave them with?
Well, there's a couple things. The first thing is, make a plan, right? Plan out just like hotels do, just like any other company would do. Set yourself up a budget with goals of what you want to do from a revenue side, right? For each month. And then you can gauge, that gives you something to gauge, right? If you're a brand new short-term rental unit owner, that's the best way to start. And then once you kind of get into it, you can look at like the previous years and say, hey, I want to grow 10%, I want to do this, right? But always have a plan so that you can drive your strategy on promotions and discounts with that, right? And pricing as well. Secondly, understand your market, understand what units are around you that compete with you, and then that gives you an idea of how you can price against them, right? Look for, like comparable amenities, comparable bedroom types, Google reviews, that just doesn't give you like competitive rates in the market, but it's also going to give you an idea of what you need to do and what you need to do better from a guest survey, guest review standpoint, right? Like if you're seeing somebody who's got a light room and they have a 3.8 score on Airbnb or Expedia, then you can say, you know what? I can beat these guys in listings if I can get up to a 4 or a 5. What can I do to elevate my guest experience without spending a lot of money, right?
Yeah,
Right.
your
You're
benchmark
always
to try are
right.
striving.
Right. And you're always looking to raise the bar, right? So, like I said, have a plan in place, do a budget, be hard on your budget, right? Like don't look at a slow month, like, say you're in New Orleans and you have it in August. Don't expect to do 90% occupancy in New Orleans. It's not going to happen, okay? Unless you know something that I don't, like if you can predict hurricanes and you're going to get business from, when the hurricanes are done, don't do it. Go in with eyes and say, this is what I think I can do. And if you can do over that, that's great. But have a plan in place for these months, and then that will help you price and say, okay, this might be an occupancy driven month. This is what I need to do. This might be a rate month, where you're going to get the occupancy, the demand's there. So I'm going to keep my rates a little bit higher. So understanding that as well, and or planning for that, and then understanding your market and your competitive sets. Those are the biggest keys to not just, short-term rentals, but also hotels. Like that's the bread and butter of revenue management, so.
There's the secrets, guys. We've told you everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. No, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and your brain and your knowledge and your expertise. We're so lucky to have you here at Hosteeva. And I just love because, like I said, if somebody asks me something about revenue management, I'm like, yeah, I know everything. And just hang up the phone. I call Chris. He tells me, and then I call how it works for me. And we did promise, Chris, our head chef of Hosteeva. I mean, you got any quick cooking tips for people?
Oh
Little
man.
Creole.
Cooking tips. Don't overcook anything. So the whole reason, so if my mom ever sees this, she's gonna hate it. But when I was a kid, my mom would cook, and And it was, the food was like, she was definitely afraid of undercooked food. So everything was dry. So if we, I'd come home from like high school and say, what is it, beef jerky tonight, pork jerky, or chicken jerky? So, make sure you cook the temperature. That's the biggest piece. And look, the other piece too is don't be afraid of salt. You know, don't be afraid of
And
salt.
season it. I literally, people ask me all the time. I'm definitely not on your level of cooking, but I'm from Louisiana. They'll be like, "Why is your spaghetti so good?" I'm like, "Tony Chachere's salt and
Right.
pepper, and
Right.
put and bell pepper." I mean, everything starts with the onion, and bell
Yeah.
pepper is just, revenue management and food. Now I'm hungry. It's time for
Yeah.
lunch. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you everyone who tuned in today. If there's clearly, if you're watching this, you're recording. If you want to know more about Hosteeva, you can email us at wegotyou@hosteeva.com. We have a variety of services. And also we just like to meet people. You have ideas for the show or revenue management, man. We'd love to hear you, right? Because this is our jam. But have a happy Friday, everybody.
Thank you.